Your collectibles are about to get more electrical. Here's your look at the McFarlane Toys DC Multiverse, the gold label collection Black Lightning. Jefferson Pierce was born in Cleveland, Ohio, the son of newspaper reporter Lewis Pierce. He was a tremendous athlete and even won an Olympic gold medal for a decathlon when Jefferson decided to become the superhero Black Lightning in order to protect his underserved neighborhood and share his life as an educator. By day, he teaches kids as a principal in Metropolis. At night, Jefferson becomes Black Lightning and, as the field leader for the Outsiders, trains the next generation of heroes to fight for justice. For criminals to say that lightning doesn't strike in the same place twice, I've never really run into Jefferson Pierce. Before, of course, we get a closer look at the Black Lightning from Final Crisis, I'd like to thank the folks first over at McFarlane Toys that did provide this sample we could have a look at. Black Lightning stands 6.5 inches in height, or the figure's going to be 17 centimeters tall. Another hero that has some experience with the Outsiders, here's what the figure looks like with a Cape Crusader. This is Batman from Nightfall. Of course, we can also bring in as well the recently looked at, this is the DC versus Vampires Hal Jordan Green Lantern. And of course, we can also bring in, well, the likes of, say, Blue Beetle. Let's bring in, say, the Flash. And a slightly bigger and bulkier figure, here's what the figure looks like with the DC Rebirth Superman. Not really a lot does come included with Black Lightning. First, the figure comes included with the same black molded stand that has the same DC logo printed down below, and if you could believe it, still has one neighboring peg off to the corner that you can plug onto the either boots of Black Lightning. You have to choose one unless you have more than one of these stands. I have more than one of these stands. I'm going to move that to the side. The figure as well comes included with a trading card. Depicted, though, on the front, first of all, it's comic art, which I like that right away. But if you look at it, the suits are very similar, other than the fact that it's notably different. This Black Lightning doesn't have hair. At some point, I would love to get a variation of this one that doesn't have the hair, because when I think of Black Lightning, I tend to think of him more in this look. If we flip around, though, to the back of the card, his real name, of course, is Jefferson Pierce, and a substantial read-up that you can either pause and read for yourself, or, in fact, you can rewind to the beginning of this video, as it was the same thing I read when the figure was turning around on my turntable. Going to move that card to the side. Now, one thing I did do differently, normally I would have then had the defaulted hands already on the figure's forearms, and then it would have also showed you just all the extra hands that you can then plug in place. Did things, though, a little bit differently this time around. I figured it was more pizzazz to then pop on the electricity hands, but the defaulted hands aren't actually these hands here. You get a closed fist, you get a relaxed hand, but then you also get the same thing, but done in this really cool translucent blue plastic. It doesn't do things exactly the same because technically it's a mirror flip. So you have, for example, a relaxed hand on this side. You get a relaxed electricity hand that goes then on this side. And vice versa, of course, when you get the closed fist. These are very nicely done. I would love to get more of these. Even looking at these, I was also thinking Captain Atom. I think that would be a fun, pair of hands I could also possibly use for Black Adam. Unfortunately, then would mean that Black Lightning then does without, but I would certainly like to see, maybe as an accessory pack down the road, McFarlane could include things like electricity hands. I think they're just too fun to not just be kept to one figure. To change out the hands, though, is actually quite easy. We're just, first of all, going to take the hands, pop them off from the provided pegs, and then we're going to go ahead and take the hand that's appropriately, thumbs, of course, facing inward. We're going to have the hand on one side. We're going to do the exact same thing on this side. Now, you don't even have to have, say, for example, you wanted to have one electricity hand. You could just do it that way and keep just a regular defaulted, or just a regular non-electricity hand on the other side. But to get the full effect, I like the full effect. We're going to pop those off and we're going to replace them. The thing about it, though, is it's a little harder to kind of line things up. You want to make sure you want to kind of get the electricity just around the top of the forearm. It is at least a bendable plastic, so that's one thing that's good at least about it. But boy, does that ever jazz up the figure and adds a lot of cool additional effects to the figure that wouldn't have already had it from before. Now again, when you get him out of the packaging, he already has this look. I just made things a little bit more boring by starting with the other hands instead. Head sculpt-wise, I really like the way that this one turned out. Now the head in this case, actually, if you look at, say, like the comic, for example, or in the closest case that we have right now, we have the card. He has kind of more of a translucency to the goggles, so you can kind of see his eyes inside of the mask. This time, though, for the figure, you're actually getting just the painted eyes in gold instead. it's still a good look. I really like the way that this did turn out. But I have to wonder that down the road, if we could only get ourselves a shaved head version of Black Lightning, I think that would be a pretty cool looking figure as well. But the paint's been handled extremely well. I think the head sculpt looks really quite good. And the use of the darker purple that they have here is very actually, in fact, close enough in color scheme. It kind of even looks like this is maybe just a tad bit darker than what we're getting here for the neck, but the colors are still pretty close. Additionally to that, we also have, again, all this blue. I did say it's kind of a more of a purplish blue. It kind of does look a little bit more like a purple blue when you get to the mask, but then when you get the further down on the figure, it actually comes across more like a navy blue. Speaking, though, of the blue, he also has a lighter blue that runs across the center of his chest, and then basically lightning bolts its way out then to his forearms. On the ends, he has, of course, the darker blue gloves, but I love the additional gold that they've outlined here for the lightning bolts on the front of the figure's torso. He doesn't seem to have that anywhere else other than the front and the back of the figure's body. He has gold down here, but it isn't quite the same gold as what they've actually painted here. So my guess is they probably molded this in the plastic. I do wish in a way that they could have actually painted this about the same sort of color scheme, because again, like if you were to look at the comics, the costume in the comics, the colors of the gold are usually matching, and this one very obviously has been more molded in the plastic, and this has been clearly painted instead. It still looks good, and the paint's been handled extremely well. The lower half of his body, I can't imagine there's any paint that's actually happened here. I mean, maybe they may have painted the boots, but my guess is that they probably just used and relied on the molded blue plastic alone. Part of its trunks obviously aren't quite the same coloring of the plastic here. It also doesn't help either that this part is more of a matte plastic, and down below here is very visibly more shinier plastic. So there's a bit of a breakup when you look at the trunks, comparing it to the torso and the legs below it. But all in all, it's a nice looking figure. Even the parts that really aren't painted, at least he gets some additional sculpting there on the sides of his legs. He also has that too, running down the middle section or the side section there also of his torso. So there's sculpting where it counts, even if the paint isn't delivering in those areas. Now for the figure's articulation, I'm going to get his arms first of all out of the way. Black Lightning's head sculpt is going to be on a ball joint once again, so it rotates all the way around. Even though he doesn't technically have a neck joint hinge, the ball joint I think is more than enough to accommodate the things that you need from the figure. So the head looks down this far, the head looks up that far. You can also rock it back and forth as well. Once again, the shoulders do rotate all the way around. I did notice, at least on my figure, that it's loose on this one side. I don't know why, because I've only really had the figure out of the packaging for about an hour or so. But I've already noticed that it's quite loose in this area, at least more in his shoulder. This shoulder isn't so bad. Both the arms actually do hinge out at 90 degrees. Of course, he also has the little cup joint there on the inside. It serves more there just to kind of hide the joint of the inside of the shoulder, as you can see right there. It kind of gives more of a cleaner, consistent look for the molding. The figure has a bicep swivel, if I can actually just hold onto the shoulder. Bicep swivel right there. The figure as well possesses a double hinge on the elbow, and the hands do rotate all the way around. The upper torso is on a ball joint. It's good to always see those. And he also as well has a ball joint at the base of his abdomen. Now again, like this is a softer plastic, but at least it forms pretty close to his legs. It does, though, if you look at his abdomen area, it does stick out a little bit further on the sides, but I don't think it looks like the, quote, figure diaper that some people have also called this line. I think this one specifically maybe does stick a little bit more here on the top, but at least it looks a little bit more consistently contoured, I think, with the rest of the figure's legs. Speaking of the legs do swivel slightly up and down or back and forth on the top of the thigh. It does move forward this way and back. You can also split the legs this far on Black Lightning. Figure does have a double hinge on the knee, which unlike the shoulder, the knees are actually, and the legs are especially, quite tight on the figure, which is good. Ankles move back and forth this way. You can rock the ankle back and forth this way. And yes, once again, the figure does have toe articulation there as well. Yeah, again, like it's a good looking figure. It's one of those, again, cases where it is a gold label edition. So I'm like looking at the body and I'm trying to pinpoint where I've seen this body before. I want to guess that it's a Superman body, or even possibly as well. Maybe no, I don't think it's the Hush Batman. I've definitely seen this build before. I just can't pinpoint where I've seen it. It does look good. It's a nice looking figure overall. He's not skinny. I mean, Black Lightning should be a bigger figure, I feel, at least on a muscular level. The thing also I did want to mention, which I didn't actually mention up to this point, is the fact that, let me just pick the figure back up once again. The lightning bolts is one other thing I wanted to make sure I did say before we kind of jumped to the final looks before I forgot about it. But the lightning bolts are one thing that aren't quite centered. You can kind of see like it sits okay on this one side, but this lightning bolt kind of wants to doesn't want to meet itself in the middle. So I'm going to see if maybe I don't know if I would be able to heat this up a little bit. It isn't quite fully symmetrical. I mean, other than that, though, it's a nice looking figure of Black Lightning. I hope that we do get ourselves a variation of this figure. I mean, I don't think they'd have to really do anything mold-wise differently to this figure, and maybe just give us an alternate head sculpt. One that has the shaved head, and hey, you never know, maybe one that also could have translucent goggles on his mask. All in all, though, great looking figure from the folks over at McFarlane Toys. Now, I guess there are a couple of things that Black Lightning does come up a little short in. One is accessories and the other is the paint. Accessories, I'm willing to give him a pass because even though he only has 2 pairs of interchangeable hands, one of those pairs just happens to be electricity hands. So come on, who's not going to want to display their figure with electricity hands? The other really is the paint. There really isn't, when you look at it, a lot of paint really on the figure. Most of them, in fact, is either blue molded plastic or lighter blue molded plastic for his arms. But to the credit, though, of McFarlane's paint team, they managed to actually mirror the light blue pretty good on the lightning bolts that they paint on the front and the back of the figure's body. The blue looks really close to the arms. I wish the same could be said, in fact, for the outlining in the gold. Now, the gold is handled well. There's no real paint problems at all with paint splotching or paint missing on those lightning bolts, but with using a matte gold for the actual belt area, the 2 golds don't quite match. It's the only real complaint I could possibly really make about the figure, and maybe for the fact that at some point I do hope we get a variation of this guy with the shaved head. But all in all, though, I think they've done a really great job here with Black Lightning. What do you guys think of the figure? Let me know down below in the comments section. Could you guys see yourselves wanting to pick up the Final Crisis Black Lightning? Let me know what you think of the figure down below in the comments section. Once again, a big thank you to the folks over at McFarlane Toys that did come through and provide the sample of the brand new Final Crisis Gold Label Edition Black Lightning. Really great looking figure. If you guys enjoyed this video, why not hit it with a like? If you guys are loving the content you guys are seeing, and you certainly would like to stick around for more, if you haven't already done so, make sure you hit that subscribe button down below. And if you all haven't already done so as well, make sure you also turn on the bell notification. That notification is there to ensure that you're getting all those reminders every single time the person behind the camera, that's me, is popping up new content. Speaking of new content, if you want to go back and look at the older content, popping up also as well will be a playlist, if you don't mind me plugging, of all the other DC Multiverse stuff that I've looked at in the past. Feel free to check that out if you have a little bit of time on your hands. Of course, as always, guys, thanks for watching. See you guys next time.